Hey y'all, it's Lindblom here. I wanted to give you a quick overhead view of how I change my strings. And at the beginning here, I'll show you what I'm using. I'm using the XS, the Dario strings, medium gauge. I always have a pencil on hand and a handy wooden string winder. I've got some flush cut wire cutters here. And of course, my favorite tone slab pick. The tone slabs are the best. So usually when I change strings, I like to do 2 at a time. So 1 pair of strings. So I'm starting with the 2 G's here. That's usually just the way I do it. I don't like to do more than 2 at a time so it doesn't take all the tension off, because I think it's better for the instrument that way. But if I only do 1 at a time, it takes me a super long time. So I'd rather just do 2. You'll notice with the XS strings, they are color coded. There's gold and silver. So the G string is the gold ones here. And it's also 40 for the gauge. The strings I'm using here are 11, 15, 26, 40. And that's just a standard medium gauge. So I'm putting some lead in the nut here. I usually go right across the slots, inside the slots, and then I like to go across the top as well because I think it gets some extra lead in there and it makes it much more smooth so that the string doesn't get caught up in the nut. And I've always done it, so it doesn't make it much harder for me. I think that's like a 0.7 for the lead. The thinner, the easier it is to get it in those little nut slots. So when I'm winding the string, I like to have 1 coil over and 1 coil under, at least 1 under. That's just the way I found it to be the neatest. So you'll notice I let the excess string go under at first so that I can have that coil above. And then after that, I'm gonna crease it at a 90-degree angle so that it's not in my way as I'm winding up the rest of the string. And then I like to get the rest of the slack or the rest of the coils to go under. And I don't have a set number of coils I do. I like to pull the string a little bit above the fretboard and give myself some slack. But as long as there's at least 1 coil on most of the strings, I've never had issues with them. Now on the E string, I like to have a little bit more just because the string is thinner and I don't do any luthier's knot or anything. It's just a standard wrap, so because of that, I don't want it to slip. And as you'll notice, the only audio in this video is either me talking or the background music. It was quite the loud house as I was changing my strings, so I figured this would probably be the best way to get a rundown of what's happening here. So after I'll use the string winder to crank it most of the way, I'll just use my hand to tune it the rest of the way up. And I would recommend having a tuner as well. I do not have a tuner on this mandolin, which I probably should, but I am just tuning it by ear because I've done it so many times I know what they sound like at this point. And then I'm also putting those little rubber grommets between the bridge and the tailpiece, so it mutes the overtones, and I think that those are pretty important. I know every mandolin has different overtones. On my Randy Wood, I have them between the bridge and the tailpiece, and also I have them above the nut, so I actually have 2 sets on that one. This one, the overtones aren't as strong, so I just have them down at the bottom. Now when I'm doing the D strings, for some reason I've always found that I do the D string that's furthest away first. I'm not totally sure why that is, but I think maybe it just gets the string out of the way easier. So the D string is the little black sticker. It's color coded. Of course, each little set comes with 2 strings. So again, I'm going to fill the nut with lead, go across the slots, and then across the top of the nut as well, over the slots. So I have a James tailpiece on my mandolin. You can't see it in this clip, but once I turn the mandolin around, you'll get to see it. So with the James tailpiece, all you have to do is hook the string on. It's super easy. So as you can tell, I'm able to do it relatively fast. So thankfully, string changing doesn't take too long, on this mandolin at least. So 1 coil over and then the rest go under. And then I'll always pluck the string along to make sure that I'm not going too high, or make sure that I'm at least close to pitch. Now when you're first putting the string through the little post on the tuners, you can spin them, you can turn them so that they line up with the way that the string is going in, but sometimes I'll find that if you just put it through wherever it is, it'll save you maybe a half turn because it's already turned and you can just put it in wherever it is. So that one looks like it was just a little bit over one coil, but I think that's plenty for the D and G strings. Because of how thick they are, I've never had issues with them slipping. And of course I'm going to put the rubber grommet at the bottom of this one as well. Now this side, these 4 that I'm changing now, are probably the harder ones for me because I'm using the string winder with my left hand. So when I have it laying on the table, it makes it a little bit slower. Sometimes when I'm unwinding them, I'll hold the mandolin up against me so that I can use my right hand to unwind them. And then it just makes it a lot faster since I'm right-handed. So there you can see the James tailpiece. You can see how easy it is to just hook the strings onto them. Now the James does have the built-in grommets. I like adding the grommets because I think it makes it a little bit more muted, the overtones, but you don't have to with the James. So now you can see I can unwind it a lot faster with the right hand. So again, I'm going to do the 2 A strings. And you might have noticed, I think it might have been out of the clip here, but I did cut off the tops of the strings just a little bit. I left about 2 inches, but on the G and the D strings, I did clip them just so that they're not in my way as I'm doing these next ones. But I do like to leave a little bit of slack at first for if they're stretching. So the A strings have the silver sticker on them. And you should be able to feel which ones go on which string because each one is a different gauge, and obviously the E string is going to be the thinnest. So it's pretty easy to tell by feeling them which one should be which. So you can see I didn't have to turn that tuning peg a little more to get it in the right place. I just left it the way it was, and then it already did a half turn for me. Now one super important thing when you're changing the strings is that you always want the string going toward the inside of the headstock. You never want the string on the outside edge, and that's pretty important. So just make sure that when you're turning them, they're always turning the right way. So the same way that you take them off, it's the same way that you'll want to put them back on. Which is another reason why it's good to only do 1 or 2 strings at first so that you can kind of match them up and make sure that you have everything correct if you're first starting out doing this. So as I'm winding the string, I really like to keep tension on it. So you can see with my left hand, I'm holding the string, I have it under my fingers, and then I'm also pushing down with the thumb. So I'm doing that to make sure it goes in the right spot, but I'm also holding it so that it keeps tension, because otherwise it'll just come off the little hook at the bottom on the tailpiece, and that just makes it so much harder if it's coming off there the whole time. Alright, now for the last 2 strings here. Now this is not a time-lapse video, this is actually how long it took me. So be careful when you're unwrapping those, not to get it caught on your finger, because that's a very common issue, especially with the E. Now the camera didn't want to focus here, but as you can see, the E is gold. So we'll get the lead in the nut, and then of course across the nut. And if it bothers you when you're done, when you have all the strings on, you can also run the eraser over the nut. But I've never really bothered with that. Alright, so you'll notice I have a little more slack for those For the E strings, I'm leaving a little more. I still only do one over, and then once it goes over, I'll take a second and crease it at a 90-degree angle so that it's sticking up straight instead of wanting to poke me the whole time. And then the rest of them will go under so that it looks nice and uniform. Now with the E strings, I like to tune them up to tension together. So I'll just make it tight enough so that it'll stay on, and so that there's a little bit of tension on it, but not enough that it's going to be a lot tighter than the one I'm currently putting on. So crease that one at the 90-degree angle as well. And then I like to tune them up together, so I'll make this one tight. Of course, one coil over, the rest under. Then you'll notice I'm just doing a little bit per E string. So maybe half a turn. Then I'm going to take a second to put that grommet in there. I almost forgot to show it to you guys. But I think at this point you probably know. So we'll get it tuned the rest of the way. Now a lot of the times I'll just do this by hand, and sometimes I'll also do it holding the mandolin so that it's facing away from me. I haven't had an issue with an E string breaking in a long time, but that's definitely the most common string to break because of how thin it is. So then I'm going to get the rest of them pretty much up to tune. I'll cut most of the slack off those strings so that they're out of the way, leaving a couple inches in case they stretch. Now this step I've been doing for a while, and it makes a huge difference. Just take the strings and pull them. I always like to keep one hand over the strings just in case something does snap, that way it won't hit me in the face. Even though I am sitting a little bit further back, I always try not to lean right over the mandolin, just for safety, in case one of the strings snaps. Now I'll tune it up again. Get it pretty close. I know I'm just using my finger, so it's only going to be so close and playing it so hard. Then I'm going to take the flush cut wire cutters and I'm going to cut right up against them. So I like to put the top of the wire cutters right up against the pole where the 90-degree angle is, and then I'll just cut it right there. So there is a little bit of slack, but it's not sticking out. So it's not like it's going to poke me every single time I try to tune the mandolin. Also, I found that putting the string at a 90-degree angle, it also holds it in better because it's not going to slip because it's creased. So yeah, there you have it. There's my quick overhead tutorial of how to change my mandolin strings. If you have any questions, leave a comment below, and if you'd like to see any closer shots, let me know as well, and I'd be more than happy to do that for you. Thanks for watching.